What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and another Outriders video with a twist. Now if you're like me, and let's be honest, there's a little bit of the full measure in each and every one of you. You're gonna wake up one day and feel, man, I really want to play some Outriders today and drink some goddamn beer. I wish there was a build that I can do both of those things simultaneously. Now ladies and gentlemen, this right here is the BEERMANCER, or BEERMANCER as it's known on my Discord, and this is exactly what you're looking for, a build that allows you to play games with one hand and drink with the other hand. Are you ready? Then let's go. Now, of course, what we're talking about here is Technomancer and one of the new sets that came out with Worldslayer called technomancer. It's specifically a set that's focused around empowering your turrets. So that is, of course, triple turret techno in essence. Now, previously I released a build video of this on the channel, which was based on Borealis. I've since gone and redesigned it a little bit, and essentially this is what we're looking at now using the technomancer set. Now, I do believe there's also a way to possibly work Flame Leper into this as well, but this to me is the epitome of easy mode in this game right now, because the simple fact is that your turrets deal so much damage that it literally almost requires no intervention from your side to be able to deal more damage. Now, if you do, however, of course it pushes the damage to the limit, but all of the footage that you're seeing in the background right now is me essentially just sitting and drinking beer with one hand and playing games with the other, with the purpose of recording content exactly for this video. I kind of play this like turret defense, so I'm using my turrets as chess pieces, moving them around, and essentially using cold snap to lock down large groups of enemies for AoEs. This is by far the most efficient way to grind high level content while you're actually trying to farm out other pieces of gear for other builds that you're trying to make for Technomancer. Plus, it's a fantastic way to play with your buddies and essentially carry people. And last, but let's surely not forget, it is a fantastic way to drink beer while you play the game. So when it comes to the actual build itself, we'll do the usual. We'll go through the weapons, we'll go through the armor, we'll look at the skills, we'll look at the class tree, the Pax Tree, and then have some Ascension suggestions. On the weapons themselves, we are looking for a ramp up weapon. And in the case here, the Final Penance is fantastic for this because it has Mage's Rage on it, and if you can get Fortress to drop on that as well, then you have everything that you need to be able to ramp up a lot of damage on bosses. Now, the reason why I put Detronome on here is because when we are running around and we're trying to kill trash, then in those cases I don't actually ramp up and worry too much about shooting crits. And there seems to be an issue right now with Detronome where no matter what you do, you are actually getting the anomaly power bonus that is on the mod right now. So that's obviously a bug, something that's not working the way that it's supposed to be, but that's just giving you a flat fucking anomaly power increase, which is great. So if I'm not running around trying to empower Mage's Rage and Fortress by hitting crits, I'm still getting that flat anomaly increase as long as I'm throwing my turrets out and they're dealing more damage. Secondary, I don't worry about too much though, but then specifically on the pistol, what I'm using here is I'm using another stat stick, or another way for me to introduce more damage or more debuffs into the enemy. Specifically in this case, this has Firestorm and Weakness Trap on it. In other words, there's another way for me to get burn onto enemies, and there's also a way for me to get weakness onto enemies. This is generally how I enter combat, so I'll come in first with the pistols out and shoot, get Firestorm to drop on something and give it weakness, and then I'll switch to, you know, Final Penance and like hit, and this is when I'm fighting a boss obviously, and then hit crits and then essentially take it down. Now when we get over to the armor itself, of course we are talking about technomancer here. I went fucking balls to the wall and just took 5 pieces technomancer because I'm a fucking degenerate. But specifically what you're looking for on here is you want to be stacking as much anomaly power as possible, and then you also want to be dipping into as much status power as possible, because that's also going to empower the attack of your cryo turrets. Now over here we have Double Trouble on here, which gives you an enhanced turret with 2 barrels instead of 1. So if you have 2 of these cryo turrets, then it's essentially like 4 cryo turrets that are shooting. And of course you can see twins on there as well, which gives us the 2 cryo turrets. Also I have Long Winter on here because our third ability, or our third skill that we're using here, is Cold Snap. Cold Snap is a fantastic way for you to essentially lock down the entire battlefield, and combined with Icicle Storm, which is also on this build, it's a great way for you to burst down large groups of enemies, and it's also something that's really handy for your teammates to capitalize on. Now, if we just spend 1 or 2 seconds talking about the Techmonger set bonus, this then says that using turret skills increases turret damage by 10%. This bonus lasts for 10 seconds and stacks up to 5 times. So generally speaking, what you'll see me doing is you'll see me going blight turret cryo, and then shortly thereafter I'll throw out another blight. That means we're operating at 40% damage for a short amount of time, which is really fantastic. And you'll actually see that, or you would have seen that in some of the footage earlier, where you just see the the damage kind of like climbing through the roof. Now, when we go over to the chest piece, again here, Icicle Storm is fantastic, because the thing is, like I said, you want Cold Snap to not only be a way for you to lock down enemies, but also a way for you to essentially hit enemies on one side and then have this ripple effect carry through and basically murder everything. We do have increased damage on here, which says that every additional shot or every turret shot from cryo turret deals more damage. These turrets are shooting twice as fast with double barrels and all of that, so this damage ends up stacking up. And you'll often find that when you look at your damage report at the end of a trial of Mfufu, or an expedition, you'll notice that by far your biggest amount of damage was from lethal devices or cryo turrets. We also have Captain Hunter on here, because really the only thing that stands up to some of our damage is captains, elites, and bosses. So this just helps us deal more damage to them. When we go over to the pants, we have improved coolant on here, which, like I said, I kind of alluded to that earlier. This doubles the fire rate of turrets, so now you have turrets with double barrels that shoot twice as fast. It's ridiculous. We're also trying to dip more into freezing damage here. Now the point is, we also need to be looking at mods that stack additional damage onto the damage that our turrets are doing. So freezing boost is good here, because that's at 8% additional damage to freeze. Virulent compound is on here as well, because it's just like a mini Captain Hunter, and it deals a little bit more damage to elites and kind of makes them explode. But I mean, I've never seen that being like a big fucking, like an awesome thing or anything like that. You just want the additional damage to elites that are affected by toxic, and of course you are spreading toxic with your blight turret. So then when we go over to the gloves, this is just, again, like I said, this is 5-piece Techmonger. So if you find other pieces that have more anomaly power on them, so if you get some purple pieces with anomaly power on them, but you get the right mod combination, then that's only going to make your damage shine more, because anomaly improves the damage from your turrets. Shatter on here gives you more damage against freeze. Radical Therapy gives you more damage against toxic. And I have Trample on the weak in it, which gives us 12% more damage against weakness. And that's why I use the pistol that shoots weakness trap, because that's just going to give more damage there. Again, I don't bother with all of this on trash or even on captains. This is really only for when you're farming the second arbiter, or basically farming the bosses in trials, or possibly if you're doing Eye of the Storm. Because only stuff with a huge amount, enemies with a huge amount of HP, are actually going to be able to stand up to your damage in the first place. Last but not least, we have Euthanizer on our feet. We have Hail Shot, and this is a big one, because this is, it increases the turrets damage, your cryo turrets, which are double barreled, double fast shooting. It increases their damage based on your status power. Now you can go and find yourself a weapon like, for instance, Heir to the Desert, which has status power on it as well, and that's definitely a fantastic upgrade to this build, because if you can get an Heir to the Desert with Mage's Rage and Fortress on there, then yes, you sacrifice Death Renome, but you have that additional status there, and that could also be good. But in the case of this build here, we have status on the mask, we have status on the chest, we have status on the legs, and we should have status on the gloves. Exactly. So 4 out of our possible 6 pieces that are counting for our status at one time actually has status on them, and that's good. Last but not least, we have Cold Purification on here. That's simply due to the fact that that's how this item rolls. I am deeply invested in finding a purple piece that gives me anomaly, gives me status, and then does not give me Cold Purification, because it's really not needed. However, it is kind of like a cool thing to have in a group, because it can be something awesome that you can save your buddies from having been set on fire or frozen or toxic on them or whatever, bleeding, anything like that, and you can actually give them status immunity for 3 seconds. And when we get over to the skill tree, obviously we are using blighted turret, and we're using cryo turret, and we have 2 of them because of twins. And we have cold snap, which is our defensive option, but can also be used very aggressively to push area. You'll see the cooldowns are super low, and that just allows us to get these turrets. And again, don't be afraid to refresh turrets, because remember, we have to be keeping in mind that the set bonus for Techmonger gives us more turret damage as we refresh these turrets. When we give over to the class tree, this right here I think is the optimal sort of like layout for us to get the most amount of anomaly that we can get, while also making sure that we get to the end of the tech shaman tree and we get those. So we are going to be coming down originally, getting anomaly power, we get some resistance piercing, we get some more anomaly power, we get a little bit of resistance here, giving us some more survivability, we get anomaly power here, and then we get a generalizing antenna. This is really good because this increases our anomaly power by 30% for 10 seconds every time we throw out a blighted turret. Now, blighted turret's cooldown is less than 10 seconds, so you're gonna be able to keep this buff up indefinitely. This leads us to wipeout, which makes us deal more damage to enemies that are below 30% of their HP, so you can finish off bosses quite easily. And then at this point here, we actually go into 2 directions. So we go on the left, we get some additional damage to freeze, we get some HP, we get exposing toxin, which gives enemies that are afflicted by toxic, which our turret applies, vulnerable, and this actually makes the vulnerable more powerful. And then when we go this way, we pick up some cooldown reduction, some max health, and we kind of just keep going this way until we get to overclocked, which allows us the Phoenix effect of waking up again if we get down, but it also gives us this very important gadget skill effect that says that we get 40% additional anomaly power and weapon damage when we cold snap, as well as throw out cryo turrets. When it comes to the Pax Tree, this is pretty much the way how you go. So you want to be getting initial striker. This gives you anomaly power or firepower depending on which one of them is higher when you activate a skill. Now we are stacking anomaly power on this build, so it's going to give us more anomaly. Now lethal devices, and this is the thing, if you check your damage report at the end of an activity, you'll notice that this might be number 1, possibly number 2 on your damage deal, and that's simply because your ordnance and gadget skills inflict toxic to enemies hit and deal additional 5% of anomaly power as damage if toxic was refreshed. When we then go over to the third point here, that's painkiller, which gives us damaging an enemy grants you 2% health regeneration for 3 seconds. This stacks up to 2 times, which means you can get to 4%. Generally speaking, it's the weirdest thing because this class ends up being so tanky that I've had situations where I've face tanked Moloch's dropping all of his abilities and everything on me, and this is of course in the expedition, and he's not able to deal enough damage to me to drop me as long as I have my turrets out. And that's definitely due to the fact that the turrets are dealing obviously a lot of damage, which feeds you HP, but also because of painkiller. Then we go top and we get permanence, which says inflicting toxic on an enemy has a 100% chance to inflict a random additional status. We are constantly applying toxic to stuff, and so therefore we are just seeing all of these additional statuses going on there, and that directly leads us to dissection. And dissection says that when every status that an enemy has on it gives us 5% more damage, and that's a huge deal because again, remember that we're putting weakness on stuff, we're burning it, and we're also hitting it with our turrets, which provide frozen and toxic. And so that's just additional damage that you're stacking on top of that. And that's why you see this sort of like ramp up effect happening when you are fighting enemies. Now, when we get over to the Ascension tree, this is more like a suggestion thing. So of course, when you're starting out with this, maybe you farm the pieces out, you'll have very few Ascension points available to you. But as always, when you're dealing with anything that's remotely to do with anomaly damage or just a general damage buff to your character, you want to be dipping into anomaly damage first, as this is just flat damage on top of your character. Now, because we are trying to empower our turrets, the next thing which can be very good is either going anomaly power or even just jumping straight into status, because that gives you additional damage due to hail shot that we have on our gear. So you want to be filling out almost all of everything that you have in anomaly here. You hardly ever have to worry about endurance and prowess, because those are more like survivability things, or in the case of prowess, this gives you additional damage to elites, which is not bad. But the point is, you aren't really going to be struggling with survivability with this build, as it is quite chunky. And as long as you have your turrets out and they're on super low cooldown, so there's really no reason for you not to, you are actually having things out there that rapidly heal you. So it's very seldom that you actually see yourself dipping into the danger zone when it comes to HP with this build. And that's the build right there. Obviously, I had a lot of fun recording this, and a lot of this is tongue-in-cheek. I really do enjoy beer, and I really do enjoy Outriders, and I like smashing those two things together. And that's basically what the idea was here. Let me know in the comments down below how you've built triple turret techno. It's a build that when we do carries and everything like that, at least one of the people are playing this build. It's so prevalent, it's so much out there, and it really is something that I think is very enjoyable to a lot of people because it's a different way of playing the game. Plus it's also kind of easy to gear for, where some of the other builds that we've seen recently are a lot more difficult and require a lot more farming. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. But as always, thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. It's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.